Hey, what's going on, everybody? Appreciate you tuning into another edition of the On the Wall podcast. We have a nice little fun show for you tonight. I'm joined by Brett, not guarding the two, he's guarding the three. How you doing tonight, Brett?
I'm doing really good. I'm doing really good. A little disappointed this weekend. The Packers lost, but you know what? That's okay. That's okay. We live and we learn.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like we'll touch on that a little bit. Because yes, we just finished up the wild card round with the game last night. So now the focus goes to divisional round, which is coming up this weekend. So Brett and I will be making picks based on how we see those games going as well. But we usually start NBA only because with the NBA I feel like it's still on the back burner until we get through the playoffs. But we still want to shine a light on some of the stories that are going on. Hey, what's going on, Jory? Already in here. Vikings also lost. That should help heal the burn a little. I would think so. If you're a Packer fan, I mean,
Hmm.
at least you weren't the what were they? What seed were they? Well, they had like the second best record in the NFC, and they lost. So their loss probably hurts a lot more, but still doesn't help. But I get it. Um, so yeah, like let's look at the All Star voting returns first, which I had them here. Hold on a second, because we did get the second return, and the third return will be later this week. I don't know how you feel. Like, how do you feel about fans voting for like the All Star starters? Are you like opposed to it? Are you okay with it? Do you think it should be weighted? Like, how do you feel about that?
I think it has to be weighted, and the reason I say that is, if you remember correctly, the reason it started to become weighted was because the Warriors fans tried to vote Zaza Pachulia into the All Star game back in like 2016. At that point, that's when
Yeah.
people were like, okay, you know what, we might need some checks and balances here.
Yes.
So I think being weighted is right because once you take that weight off,
Mm-hmm.
then you're running into that situation where, hey, guess what? Now guys like Zaza are all stars.
Yeah.
If no weights, guess what? Now we might have guys like all star Al Horford, which by the way I'm fully for, but
Mm-hmm.
like we also kind of gotta make sure it doesn't get too crazy up in there.
Right. I mean, look, we've seen guys like Jamal McGlure back in the day. Which I mean, no hate on Jamal McGlure, like he was a good player, but him as an All Star was just it just felt kind of weird that he actually made the team. But these are the second returns on the All Star. I guess for you looking at these, like your initial thoughts, because like the West front court, Jokic, Durant, LeBron, Wemby, AD are your top five. You got Sengun, Jalen Williams, Andrew Wiggins, Sabonis, Jaren Jackson filling out the 10. The West guards, you got SGA, Curry, Luca, Kyrie, and Ant as your top five. Then filling out the rest of the 10, you got Harden, Morant, Fox, Booker, Powell. In the East, your guy Giannis leads the way in the front court with Tatum, Cat, Paolo, and Jalen Brown. Then rounding out, you got Jimmy Butler, Franz Wagner, Evan Mobley, Joel Embiid, and Paul George. Guards, you got LaMelo Ball, Donovan Mitchell, Damian Lillard, Jalen Brunson, Trey Young as your top five. Then Tyrese Maxey, Cade Cunningham, Jordan Poole, Darius Garland, Tyler Hero, rounding out your top 10. So, initial thoughts when looking at this, I guess we'll start with the West. What stands out to you?
What stands out in the West? Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah.
Oh, he shouldn't be there. That's absolutely for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Wemby, I think, should be higher than four. And you're kind of seeing the problem sometimes with All Star fan voting is also it's just kind of a popularity contest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said, I think Wemby should be higher. And you kind of look down the list, like James Harden, the sixth best guard in the West? Probably not, but
Yeah.
and I'm not. And James is having a great year. Ain't trying to bash James Harden at all, but overall, I don't hate it. I do like that the fans actually got Norman Powell in the 10th. He's having a hell of a year. He definitely deserves that nod.
Hmm.
I'll take it. I love little surprises like that. But overall, I think the West is probably a lot better than the East voting, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree with that. Hey, what's going on, Key? Appreciate you tuning in. Yeah, I feel like yes, there are some names in the West I would move around, but grand scheme, the West looks a lot better than the East, which we'll talk about here in a second. I agree with you. If Wembayama was a little higher, I mean, where would you? I guess where would you fit him? Like right after Jokic, after Durant.
Straight up, Wemby's been better than I would say he's been better than LeBron this year, and he's probably been better than KD.
Mm-hmm.
The thing with LeBron and KD, and I think you can go either way here, and it might be controversial to some, but Wemby is just he's still developing on the offensive end, but even then, that growth has been insanely rapid.
Mm-hmm.
And also, just he's a one man defense by himself already.
Mm-hmm.
So I would honestly have Wemby right up there, right behind Nikola Jokic so far this year. He's been just absolutely that good.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, look. To be honest with you, I could make the argument Wemby and AD could be higher than LeBron. I mean, I know LeBron is still a very popular player amongst fans, but it's like you said, once some of these players get to a certain point, they just get a bunch of votes for being a name that people know, and that's what's happening here with KD, LeBron. Even Jokic is like a name that a lot of people know, but Jokic is still kind of putting up those numbers like that. I mean, I like seeing Jalen Williams up here. I feel like I would like to see him a little higher, but yeah, I can't really get too mad about that. All right, so let's look at the East because the East is where I have a few problems. Yeah, okay. So, what's your biggest takeaway from the East? What names are because I know when I was reading off a couple of names, like you had a reaction. So,
Uh,
what were some of the names that I guess caught your eye, whether they're too high or too low?
um, Paul George or Joel Embiid in the top 10 is kind of wild. Joel's hardly played. Paul George spending more time complaining about playing center on his podcast and playing, meaningful basketball.
Right? Yeah.
Jimmy Butler at 6.
Yeah.
Like, the front court is to me is just like a little wild for that one. And another name right now, I think you could also argue Paulo, just because he hasn't played in enough games. His production is all star worthy.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I'm actually more okay with Paulo than I am with someone like Jimmy and
Yes.
Joel and Paul George. Because at least when I look at Paulo, even though he's missed quite a bit of the season, you look at him, you go, yeah, that's all star impact. If when you watch Paul George, does that scream all star impact?
No,
Like,
I mean,
and
if he's still in here, Key can speak to that as well as a Sixers fan. Like, I'm sure Key would probably say it has not worked so far.
the guards, I don't hate the guards necessarily. Actually,
Okay.
I think when it comes to Tyrese Maxey, I like him being there. He's really been balling out and just doing his absolute best to keep the 76ers afloat while
Mm-hmm.
everybody's missing. So I know a lot of people will be like Jordan Poole, but Jordan Poole's even bounced back this year.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, I actually don't have a problem with the guards as much. The biggest problem to me would probably be LaMelo Ball at a 1.
That
But that's where the popularity contest part comes
yeah.
in. I know it's like shoes and everything sells. The name Ball's popular right now because Leangelo has Tweaker out right now or whatever the song's called. So overall, though, I actually don't have a problem with the guards. Just it's mainly with the forwards, and I'm like, what are we doing here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I don't like. I get Lamelo, the social media following and everything like that, but I wouldn't put him up there. And I feel like Cade Cunningham. I'm gonna need the Pistons fans to step up. Like, let's get Cade a little higher. I mean, not to be a starter, because I do think, at least I hope, that the coaches would put Cade into the All Star game. But yeah, I feel like he should be a little higher on this list. I know, yeah, Jory's talking about Maxi needs to be over Trey. Um, Mitchell needs to be one. Kate should be higher than Trey. I would agree with that.
I will defend Trey Young here actually because he has shown a lot of growth this year.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is obviously the offense can still be hit or miss. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes he still takes bad shots, but he's actually been like very actively like hunting smarter shots this year. And of course, the other thing to me this year, and this is the biggest difference, and this is going to sound weird for me saying it, right? He's been a bad defender this year, which is very good for him because when we were
Was
talking Trey
usually
Young,
horrible.
we're talking literally in the argument for worst defender of all time. Him like upgrading to even just a bad defender is very huge. And the Hawks, they were a 6 seed in the East. And this is maybe where you can make an argument that Jalen Johnson should be getting love because it was until his injury then they started kind of dropping.
Mm-hmm.
But I will give Trey Young credit; he's been much improved this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have my like bias against Trey. I would say in terms of like playmaking, he has been better, and I agree the shot selection isn't as atrocious as it used to be. I'd still put Cade higher because the turnaround in Detroit, like you can basically finger point that to like Cade Cunningham staying healthy and kind of in just his ability on the court. But you know, I think it'd be interesting with the two of them in that position. Would the coaches take both? Would they take maybe just one of them? Because if you figure like Brunson's in along with Dame and all those guys, it's like how many other of these smaller guards do you take? I mean, I don't know because it's gonna be interesting if it comes down to like Trey, Maxi, Cade, maybe even a Darius Garland with Cleveland and their record and everything. They're not gonna take all of those guards. Like, where do they kind of cut it off?
If anything, the biggest thing that annoys me about the Eastern Conference front court, I think too, on the Eastern side is why is Evan Mobley down so low?
Right. Yeah, because
That
you
that
you kind of figure with Cleveland's record, like they'd be represented a little bit better. But apparently, all Cleveland fans are just stuffing the ballot box for Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, no, I it's smart. It really is smart. I get that. Like, definitely, D Mitch is an absolute worthwhile guy to be stuffing the ballot box for. But I think another one of the biggest things that's happened this year for Cleveland is just the continued development of
Mm-hmm.
Evan Mobley. He continues to stretch out his range every
Yep.
year and become more consistent. He's like slowly upping the volume. He's shooting more threes, and
Mm-hmm.
he's just been in the past couple of years, you could get physical with him and kind of knock him off his spot. This year, he's been much better at just absorbing physicality and playing through mismatches. So
Yep.
I definitely think that he should be above. He at least should be above Jimmy Butler. Like Jimmy at 6, I just hating that altogether.
I don't blame you. Like it is wild that he's up that high. Right. Yeah. Jimmy isn't playing, but he's sixth in voting. So I guess we'll see with the third returns if the suspension with Butler and everything factors in. We'll see. I would hope it does, but once again, with it being fan voting, you never know. Like by Jimmy Butler being away, like more Heat fans might have gone in and put Jimmy Butler just to try to get him even higher, just to I don't know. Like it is what it is when it comes to fan voting. Like you get what you get with it. But yeah, that's kind of where we wanted to start off the show. Um, yeah, so let's go ahead and move to. Actually, take that away right now. Steph Curry. So Steph Curry was basically talking about the Warriors because after their hot start, they have fallen off mightily, and I believe like the topic has been breached about trades and everything like that. I don't know, maybe to maybe gauge Curry's desire to stay there. I don't know what the line of questioning was for, but Curry came out and said he doesn't want the Warriors to make a desperate move, which I guess would be, blowing it up and like trading him or maybe trading away some of these young players as they're still developing, which would probably be the worst move for them because they were already a team that was kind of looking for some youth coming out of the Curry, Draymond, Klay Thompson kind of era. So do you have any issue with what Curry said? Would that be the right move for the Warriors to not get desperate and try to force a contender out of this group? And I think Jory kind of put it, yeah, it probably just means leave Kaminga alone.
I think this is also them just saying the right things because you don't want your stars to come out and go,
Yeah, they
yeah, give
can't
me another
think. Yeah,
star to the
yeah,
media because not only do you not want to put that out in public if the Warriors are still seeking a trade behind the scenes, you don't want to look desperate and get fleeced, right?
yeah.
So I think this might be a little bit of a smokescreen. You know,
Okay.
those guys want to compete. You know, they want to win,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe they really don't want them to make a desperate move. It looks like they genuinely care about the franchise, and they don't want them to just put in a bad spot when they're gone. That could be a realistic option,
Mm-hmm.
but I wouldn't be shocked if there's still a move to be made because, like, I think at the end of the day, Steph isn't going to come out and go, he's not going to pull like what LeBron did years ago and said, "Yeah, give me a effing playmaker." He's not going. He's not going to do that
Yeah.
because now you look desperate to anybody you're trying to trade with. So I think that this might be. I think it's 50-50, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is a smokescreen in all reality. I think they want to win, but they don't want to look desperate. But I'm not going to sit here and say that they don't care about the franchise at this point because they clearly do. But
Mm-hmm.
if you want my honesty, my 100% opinion, they want to win. They're just trying. They're just trying not to look desperate to other teams.
Yeah, I feel like when you're in a position like the Warriors are, it's a bit of a catch-22 where the front office is going to feel that pressure to try to make it work with Steph Curry while you still have him. But you also don't want to put yourself in a position like kind of the Cavs were when LeBron left, where you brought in all these guys to kind of extend LeBron's championship window, I guess, or even just get into the championship window with LeBron, and then he leaves. And now you're stuck with a bunch of guys that you can't move, and doesn't really make it attractive to free agents. And that's where the Warriors are kind of stuck. And like I said, Jory's talking about Kaminga. I mean, you're looking at guys like Moody and some of these young guys. Like, you don't want to be the Warriors and trade them off. Then Curry retires, and now you're trying to rebuild, and you see that these guys become stars somewhere else. You'd rather ride it. I mean, unless it is like a front, as you put it, and they probably end up moving them anyway. But I mean, look, the Curry's won enough in Golden State that I think fans are okay if he ends up leaving and they don't win another one. I also kind of get the impression from Curry that he's not going to be the type to put all that pressure on the front office. I think in Curry's mind, he probably feels like he can probably win with pretty much anybody around him as long as they obviously play a certain way and some of these young guys develop the way that they should. So I see where Curry's coming from. Like, if he is being legit, if I were in the Warriors position because you've already won before, I wouldn't mortgage the future for Curry, who's up there in age. You don't know how much longer you have with him. Like, just kind of stay the course. Hope the younger guys get to a certain level. That if it's not this year, then next year in a better position, and maybe you make an off-season move or two that helps, and you maybe move back up towards the top of the West. But they showed early on like they were a team that looked like they could contend. It's just that now they've kind of fallen back down to earth. So I don't know. It's always tricky when you have an aging superstar like Curry is.
Yeah, for sure. But it's one of those things that we all know that that two timeline system never works. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that's a good point.
if Curry's happy with four and he doesn't want to put the Warriors in an awful spot when he leaves, more power to him. I can respect that. I can
Hmm.
respect them looking out for the franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep it moving with. Uh, let's go NFL. I was thinking about another NBA topic, but let's go NFL. Mike Tomlin, because obviously, whenever the Steelers lose in the playoffs, it's always like that first day, couple of days after, where Steelers fans want to get loud about Tomlin needs to go, all this kind of stuff. Tomlin has a no trade clause. There were some rumors about could teams trade for him. Well, Tomlin basically came out and said, "Don't waste your time. I'm not available." Is it? Would it be the right move with Tomlin? Look, Tomlin's been there a long time. We know it's been several years since he's won a Super Bowl. Should Tomlin be safe in Pittsburgh?
So it's weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like we're talking. If we talk about Mike Tomlin, you he's such a good coach, and I know
Mm-hmm.
people have this championship or bust mentality, but the reality is, no matter what you give to Mike Tomlin, he's gonna compete. He's like the ultimate floor raiser in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, like it's weird because now the Steelers are in this awkward position where they're good enough to make the playoffs, but not good enough to compete. And the problem is they don't have a franchise quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to suggest trade Tomlin or get rid of Tomlin because you're not going to find another coach that's like him or better than him.
Yep.
So I think at the end of the day, that was Arthur Smith. That's one thing Mike Tomlin didn't do well is he did not pick a good OC. I think at the end it would be best if Pittsburgh just bottomed out, got themselves a franchise guy, or just traded up a lot of picks to get that franchise guy. But at the end of the day, Pittsburgh wouldn't really. I wouldn't release Tomlin if you think you've reached the end of the rope, like kind of an Andy Reid and Philly situation. You could trade Tomlin, but as of right now, I think it's the right call to keep Tomlin and let it run.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of have to agree with that. Yes, the championship hasn't been there in a while, but Tomlin clearly shows that he can get your team into the playoffs. And look, with the NFL, basically with any sport, like if you get to the dance, you have a chance. Now, the problem was the quarterback play wasn't good enough. Russ struggled mightily, at least in the first half. Russ had a better second half, but you could also look at, as Anthony pointed out, the OC and Arthur Smith maybe taking too long to modify the game plan to fully attack Baltimore's defense. So Anthony says he would trade Pickens. Would you?
Yeah, I would probably trade Pickens at this point. He's not the guy. I'm not opposed to that at all. I think at the end of the day, your number one goal, you just have to go out and find your franchise quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's a good offer out there for Pickens, I would absolutely take it. I think Pickens is a good receiver, but the problem is he takes himself out of games. He's
Hmm.
almost kind of got that diva mentality. He's throwing his hands up if he's not getting the ball enough. And overall, yeah, if there's an offer for Pickens out there, I, I would really look into it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's untradeable for sure. Do what Panthers did, build a young offense. Which, if you're gonna do that, you would hopefully have a young quarterback to go along with it. So I'm assuming for you, Russ is on a 1 year deal. You let Russ walk.
Yeah. Oh
What do
my
you do with
goodness.
Justin Fields?
I think you sign. I think you re-sign Justin Fields, maybe like a 2 and 2, 3 year contract. And I think
Mhm.
what you do, what thing what that does for you is you can maybe see if Justin Fields can develop into that franchise guy.
Okay.
And at worst, he's a good bridge quarterback while you try to trade for that guy or bottom out a year or trade up in the draft.
Mhm.
Overall, I think that you let Russ walk for sure. That man is cooked.
Yeah.
Danger Russ is gone. Call him Sierra's husband. The only danger of him stepping on a football field is to the Steelers offense.
Yeah. Okay. So move on from Russ. Resign Fields. I'm assuming you're still taking one in the draft.
Oh, for sure. Unless the Fields really, really shows out this year and shows you he can be the guy, yeah, I think the goal is you still take a quarterback in the draft.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would agree. I am somebody who kind of roots for Russ to do well, but it's hard not watching him, especially in that playoff game where he's dropping back, he's stepping up into the pressure, taking sacks, he's trying to scramble, but he's not fast enough to get away from anybody anymore. I mean, the times that the broadcast showed his feet on some of these throws, like they were like horrendous. It's like he can still make throws because he made some throws in the second half where you're like, okay, that's like vintage Russ. But then for most of the first half, it was like this looks like a guy who's kind of at the end, and like this is it. So
I
I guess that'd be a follow up question before you kind of I guess go into what I was talking about. Is Russ done as a starting quarterback in this league?
For any team with serious actual contending aspirations, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think he can still be like a bridge quarterback on a bad team that can mentor a young quarterback. And I think that's just who Russ is right now. And I think he either has to accept that or retire. In all reality,
Mm-hmm.
he had his chance this year, and he started out hot. Obviously, he put together a couple of strong weeks, but then it just completely fell apart for him. And then his other big selling point is he's a veteran. He doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't make as many mistakes as a rookie. Except that 2 minute drive against the Bengals will forever haunt me because of how many mistakes he made that even Justin Fields wouldn't have made.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, yeah, I think Russ is done as a starter on a serious football team.
Yeah, I guess I mean I have to kind of agree with that. Like, yeah, I because I'm looking at some of these teams that need quarterbacks, and I'm like, if Russ goes there, are they any better? Like, if he went to Cleveland, would you trust him with Cleveland's weapons to take that team to the playoffs? Probably no. If he had to go to like the Saints wanted to move off Derek Carr, would Russ go in there and would they be any better than they were this past season? Probably not. So yeah, I think he definitely shows like a guy who, if he was holding a clipboard next season, like you'd probably feel good about what he could teach a young quarterback as long as you have the right young quarterback for him to kind of mentor, sure. But yeah, if he's gonna go into this offseason assuming he's gonna be a starter, then yeah, he might want to start filling out that paperwork and kind of call it a career. So Anthony goes, call me crazy. TJ Watt is 31 years old, so you think about trading him for draft capital because he's getting old.
No, I think TJ Watt's one of those guys that you don't move on from him unless he asks you to. Normally, the answer is yes if there's a good enough out there for it. But TJ Watt, and I think you can appreciate this. There's some guys in your franchise that are just so impactful and just so like ingrained into the culture of the franchise and are
Mm-hmm.
just so important that you don't get rid of them unless they really want out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, the Rams would never trade Aaron Donald even if he was slipping.
Mm-hmm.
And we can keep going on these
Yeah.
different franchise like legends, and I think TJ Watt to the Steelers at this point is starting to hit kind of in that franchise legend territory.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if there's an offer that blows you away, if some team's willing to give you like many firsts for him, then obviously you have to consider it. But I think TJ Watt's at a point with how highly the Steelers are going to value him that you would have to massively overpay to even get them to consider moving on from Watt because of how much he means not
Yeah.
only to the franchise, just to the city of Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, 31 pass rusher with especially him, I guess whatever was wrong with his arm, I guess we'll kind of have to see what happens with that. But yeah, I wouldn't move him. I feel like you use him once again next season. Hope the defense is still as good as it is while you're trying to now bring in a young quarterback or Fields kind of developing on the job and see if you can move a little further than you did this year. Which I mean, it was still a great season for the Steelers because not a lot of people had them, winning as many games as they did and everything like that. But the end obviously wasn't the greatest. And not even just against the Ravens, like their last like 4 weeks of the regular season, like they were a much different team than the weeks prior to that. So it's probably a fitting end to their season. All right, let's go wild card weekend takeaway. So let me pull up the bracket here to kind of give everybody an idea. Here we go. Sound like Dak there. There we go.
There we go.
Every time in Madden, facing a Cowboys user and you hear that, I'm just like, yeah, they really put that in the game for him. Okay. Shout out to Dak Prescott. But yeah, so running through these scores from Wildcard Weekend, and then we'll kind of talk about that quickly, and then do our picks because they do have the lines on here, which that definitely works. So first game of Wildcard Weekend, we had the Texans beat the Chargers 32-12. I guess we could stop on each game and do a quick kind of assessment. What did you get out of that game? Because I'll be honest, I had the Chargers winning that only because I was not impressed with the Texans much of this year. I thought the Chargers were the better team, but Herbert struggles again. The Texans defense looked great. The Texans offense still doesn't look quite right. So, yeah, what do you make of this game?
Um, what do you make of this game? I don't think there's really too much to take away from
Mm-hmm.
this game other than the Chargers were just terrible, especially Herbert. The Texans gave them ample opportunity to, move the ball and really do some damage. Neither team started out particularly hot, but overall, it came down to who would play safer football, and Herbert didn't do that. He continuously put the ball in harm's way and just continuously made a lot of poor choices, which I'm willing to give him. Obviously, I think, he's still young. He's got a great future, so I'm not going to, write him off.
Yeah.
But overall, the the big takeaway, the better team won. The Texans took advantage of their opportunities. The Chargers just flat out didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we'll probably have to save for another show to talk a little bit more about Herbert because I feel like when we have quarterback conversations, Herbert's not a guy you really bring up, whether it's good or bad. and I almost don't even know how I should feel about that because we'll talk Trevor Lawrence, you'll talk, Lamar, you'll talk Josh Allen, you'll talk all these guys, and Herbert's like the forgotten guy. And maybe that's because playoff wise, he either hasn't been there a lot of his career, or when he hasn't looked great. But like I said, we'll probably say that for another day. Um, Next up, we had the Ravens beat the Steelers 28-14. And I mean, looking at this game, we kind of touched on it with Russ. Like he wasn't good enough, and for the Ravens, it was Derrick Henry. Like it's like that man. You know, I don't care what his age is. Like that guy, I almost at this point wouldn't have any doubts if Derrick Henry was like 35, 36 years old. He probably still wouldn't be out here running like 100, 105, 120 yards in a playoff game or something. Like that guy is just, I don't know, just a specimen at this point. So I guess what was the takeaways from that one? I guess for the Ravens, because we did talk about the Steelers a little bit. The Ravens,
The
I feel like a
Ravens,
lot of the conversation after this game was Lamar silencing doubters. Was that anywhere in your mind as you were watching that game that Lamar was silencing doubters?
no, I think him silencing the doubters will start this week.
Yes.
Last week was just them beating up an overmatched opponent.
Yeah.
Like they had I think it was 299 rush yards. I heard that conversation where they're like, "Oh, Lamar with his arm." It's like that's not the takeaway at all. Like Lamar was great. Don't get me wrong, he was great. He did exactly what he needed to. It was him on the ground with Derrick Henry though that was just the absolute talking point. Should have been the talking point because they Ravens came in, they didn't play with their food. They came in and immediately just punched the Steelers in the mouth, and the Steelers never recovered from it.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, it's just like I don't know the Lamar conversations from some people is wild because, like you were saying, if you look at the numbers, Derrick Henry outgained Lamar on the ground compared to Lamar's air passing yards, even rushing yards. A lot of Lamar's rushing yards came off of the RPO. When the Steelers' game plan was, if they're an RPO, beeline for Derrick Henry. Don't let Derrick Henry be the one to get going and get downhill. And that's where a lot of times, Lamar kept it. He was like one on one with like a linebacker trying to fill. I feel like they ran it at TJ Watt a lot because TJ Watt a lot of time was going in and tackling Derrick Henry without the ball. And then Lamar was like one on one against the linebacker. He got a few yards, and it's just like everything Lamar did, you could basically look at it and say Derrick Henry impacted it. So I don't know why everybody's trying to make this season out to be like Lamar's doing all this work. Yes, the numbers look good, but watching the games, it's like Derrick Henry has made it so much easier on Lamar this year.
I almost think though, because the counter argument for sure is I think you could also argue that Lamar has also made it easier on Derrick Henry, right?
Well, absolutely, yes. His threat in the running game as well.
Say, and even Lamar has absolutely looked much better as a passer under Todd Monken, and the threat of the throw and his just ability to make plays happen. Because I noticed that too. It was they kept running it with Lamar.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as they finally started dedicating extra guys to Lamar, that's when they were like, "Oh, okay, here's Derrick Henry."
Mm-hmm.
Because if we remember that big 45-yard touchdown run he had, that was made possible because three guys went with Lamar.
Mm-hmm.
When Lamar went to the outside, he took three with him,
Yeah.
and just at that point, that that's a little bit too light of a box against Derrick Henry. There's a big gaping hole went right up it.
Yeah.
So overall, just the Ravens have built this absolutely two-headed monster in the ground game, and the question will be for this upcoming weekend: how do the Bills slow that down?
Yeah. That's fair. All right, let's go to the next one. We got Bills Broncos. I mean, this one was the one kind of blowout. I mean, Texans Chargers, I guess, is a bit of a blowout, but the Texans didn't look all that good, so I don't want to give them all that credit. But the Bills in this one, like they were down 7-0 to the Broncos early. It seemed like a lot of people were like, "Oh, here comes that upset," and then we saw the Bills just like once the Bills got it going, the Broncos had no chance in this one. Not
Sh-
not to look down on the Broncos season. I thought it was a really good year from them. Bo Nix as a rookie had a really good year, so there's some optimism for next year. But I guess takeaway from this one, I guess from the Bills, like would you think about them?
yeah. First off, shout out, Jordan, Mister. I told you the Broncos were going to win after the opening touchdown. Um, I thought we saw a lot of growth from Josh Allen. There are
Mm-hmm.
so many plays that when it came to Josh Allen years past, he would have just sent it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that would have been throwing some bad picks. There were some plays where I looked at it like, oh, old Josh Allen would just sent that thing through double coverage or into it. I think once again that was just the Bills playing smart football. That was Josh Allen just being very smart and taking care of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And credit to Bo Nix, by the way. Like I know it doesn't look good. You look at that scoring board, 7 points. It doesn't look pretty. But the reality is, he did great. Like we're talking about, he led a field goal drive. They just missed
Mm-hmm.
the field goal. Cortland Sutton had a couple of bad drops. Mims had a bad drop on third down. He was leading them, and he was making some really nice throws. He was not getting a lot of help. So I'm not going to say he was perfect because obviously he wasn't. But overall, I will do want to give Nix a lot of credit for what he did in that game. He really did try his best, but this was just over just a mismatch. The Bills just played it smart, and eventually they just kind of ran away with it.
Yeah. Um, I guess when we look at Bills Ravens here in a little bit, we will kind of touch back on Jory's point. Ravens fans need to understand that this is not the same Bills team from the last time they played because a lot of Ravens fans are looking at this matchup like, hey, we beat them in the regular season, should be no problem. The Bills were missing some guys that are now pivotal to the Bills' success right now. Um, Damien, what's going on? Let's get this one out of the way. Uh,
No.
is it time
Um,
to call Sean Payton and Mike Tomlin overrated?
as somebody who was hating on Sean Payton earlier, I thought
Yeah.
Sean Payton actually called a perfectly fine game. There are some games where you look at it and you go, "Oh, nobody was open. The play calling was atrocious." But I thought there were plenty of guys open.
Mm-hmm.
And when people got open in Denver, I think that they just weren't making plays. I thought Sean Payton took a team that it was like 50 million in the red coming in with that Russ contract, leading them to the playoffs, which nobody thought they were going to be
Yeah.
even close to a playoff berth. I thought that was super impressive. So I will eat my words and say I was wrong about Sean Payton this year. He was impressive. He was really good for them this year. Exactly what they needed.
Yeah. I mean, look, you look at the rookie quarterback class. Bo Nix wasn't thought of as one of the top ones in the group. So yeah, the fact that they were able to use Bo and get to the playoffs, I can't because I'm also another one that doesn't necessarily love Sean Payton like that. But you gotta give him credit for the coaching job he did with this group. And Mike Tomlin, like I'm not going overrated with Mike Tomlin anytime soon. All right, so I mean, we'll see how much you want to talk about this one, Brett. But the Eagles beat the Packers 22-10. I feel like the big thing with this was like one, Packers injuries during the game were crazy. But I guess I mean, I'll let you speak on the Packers too. But looking at the Eagles, were you impressed by their performance? Because I still think I thought the defense fine, but the offense just still doesn't look right to me. So like I know you paid special attention to this one. Like, what do you think about the Eagles play? And what do you have to say about your Packers?
I think the Eagles' offense will be fine. I think the reality is we're just two elite defenses going at each other. They were both top five defenses in the league,
Mm-hmm.
and they showed right. They both completely mucked each other's offenses up.
Yep.
So I think the Eagles, to say they were not right, I think that's fair. But I'm willing to give a lot more of the credit to the Green Bay defense
That's fair. Yeah.
because I think they did a hell of a job just making sure everybody was covered up, and they did a really good job containing Saquon.
Mhm.
So overall, yeah, I would say that's right. The Eagles' offense did come out, that did look rusty, but they were just playing an elite defense, so I'm not too concerned about them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. Um, I mean, we'll see because the Eagles have another interesting matchup coming up here. As you know, Damien's showing his Bears allegiance.
Yeah,
Which I mean, look,
it
it's bold as a Bears fan to come at the Packers when, as Anthony put it, the Bears are looking for a coach. The Bears
they
are
inter
hoping that they finally have a good quarterback. Like the Bears have a lot of things going on with them.
the Bears interviewed the Giants' offensive coordinator. That's how unserious this coaching search is for them. Like that's the 30th best offense in the league, and
Hmm.
that's who you're interviewing. Come on now.
Yeah.
I'll speak on the Packers side of things too. And you could tell it was going to be an uphill battle early. We lost Jenkins really early, and that's killer because
Hmm.
according to PFF, that's the third best guard in the league this year, leaving the game. It was already going to be tough with Jenkins. Without him, it was impossible. We saw Campbell get like three holding penalties in a row and just eventually got taken out of the game.
Hmm.
I think that was kind of almost the death blow. It was that Jenkins injury. It just kept allowing pressure up the middle. Love was never able to get comfortable.
Hmm.
That Eagles defense is just elite, so just everybody was covered up. So overall, at the end of the day, when it comes to the Packers season, I'm
Hmm.
proud of what we did this year. I'm happy with it. We won like I think it was 10 games last year, up to 11 this year. And most years we would be second in the division, but we just a hot happened to be behind a hot Vikings team too, which nobody saw coming.
Yeah.
And I think next year's the real year for Green Bay because for the first time we have like no dead money from the Aaron Rodgers years. We're gonna have like
Yeah.
40 million in cap space to really build around Jordan Love. And I think it's time for us to just stop being the youngest team in the league because that's kind of what killed us, right? We're talking about. I heard this stupid complaint, and I think a lot of Packers fans are idiots too. Don't get me wrong, but I'm hearing it was Packers versus the refs. Like it was Packers versus ourselves. Let's be real. We knew in order to beat the Eagles, we couldn't make mistakes. We fumbled the opening kickoff. You know,
Hmm.
among and obviously there was a couple of Jordan Love picks. Which, by the way, on the second one with Zach Braun, I think Zach Braun just made a hell of a play.
Hmm.
But also, how many unsportsmanlike conducts did we have? Two. We had like 80 yards worth of penalties, including one where we could have held Jake Elliott to a long field goal attempt, but we throw Saquon to the ground after the play was over and give Elliott a chip shot.
Yeah.
So if you're a Packers fan listening to this, I don't want to hear it was Packers versus the refs. It was Packers versus ourselves. We kind of self-destructed, offensively speaking. It was not pretty, but overall, I'm still proud of what we did and how we still just competed, even though things weren't going our way. And next year, I
Hmm.
think we just got to use that cap space, get more vets out there. That when things aren't going well, they'll be like, "Okay, let's settle this down real quick." So overall, very proud, very happy of our season, and I'm really looking forward to next year.
Yeah. Um, Damien put he hopes to God that they don't get Mike McCarthy. Look, I think the Bears coaching vacancy. Look, I don't know where they go because I'm assuming Thomas Brown will probably interview for it. I'm sure Bears fans would probably want somebody else. I have a feeling the minute the Lions either lose or if they win the Super Bowl like the day after, I'm assuming the Bears probably go like full court press to get him, but other teams probably will be waiting in line. I'm also interested in this whole kind of rumor mill about Marcus Freeman from Notre Dame, him potentially making the jump to the NFL. Like, is that a move the Bears would try to go as well? Like, I don't know, but I guess quick question for you before we move on. With the Patriots obviously hiring Vrabel, is the Bears job the most attractive one out of the ones that are left?
Yes and no. Yes, because they have Caleb Williams. No, because Ryan Poles is still the GM and he's just an idiot. And I think that's
Yeah.
going to be what kills them. And I think the Bears have to be ready because they might have a chance for someone like Ben Johnson, but he might be like, if I come in, Poles has to go. They got to be ready to make that choice. And if I'm the Bears, I'm not going to let Ryan Poles prevent me from getting a top head coaching candidate.
Sure, you get an interview for the Bears head coaching job on Indeed. Okay, so Damien goes. He'd have Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, or Joe Brady. Okay, I mean it's a realistic candidate list. Ben Johnson, we know will probably get a job. Aaron Glenn, I feel like gets a job this cycle. Joe Brady, we'll see if there's enough, I guess, chairs on the deck for him to take a seat. But those those are realistic names. I guess Damien, we'll see if they get one of them or if they go after Mike McCarthy, who they wanted to interview before. If Mike McCarthy is finally free to do so, even though last week he couldn't, but then the Cowboys don't approach him for an extension and then just go, yeah, we're cutting ties with you. It's like you did that last week, but you just forced them to stick around for a week. But all right, we'll see what happens with that one. Next game, we got the Commanders and the Bucks. This game I found kind of entertaining. I was definitely conflicted with. I mean, you guys know I'm a big Baker fan. I'm also a big fan of Jaden Daniels. It seemed like the Commanders are kind of doing everything they could to give this one away, especially early on when Dan Quinn thought he was Dan Campbell and was just going for fourth down after fourth down, and um, but they do move on. So Jane Daniels, Dan Quinn, they get that playoff win. Baker Mayfield said, after the game that the sloppy offense was on him, but I wouldn't expect anything less from Baker. So I guess what was your takeaway from that game?
Jaden Daniels is a young rising star, is my takeaway. The mark of a good quarterback is finding ways to win games, even if you aren't really doing your best. And that's what we see out of these
Mm-hmm.
elite quarterbacks, right? Like, even if they're not playing at their absolute best, they'll find a way. Jaden Daniels found a way. It wasn't his best game. It didn't matter. At the end of the day, when they needed to make something happen, obviously Baker fumbles. Jaden Daniels makes it happen, get them into field goal range, ball game. So my takeaway, and I think what should be the takeaway from this game, is it feels like that was Jaden Daniels' coming out party. Like that to me, he showed he's going to be an elite quarterback in this league for years to come.
I mean, Anthony, that's a good yeah. Lattimore did not have a great game. I look when they made the move, I was like, I definitely see it, but yeah, hasn't really worked out in their favor. Jury put Battle of the Dans, which we'll get to that shortly. Damien, I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't like if you liked Brian Flores. I wouldn't use last night as a reason to not because take the past 2 years what he did with that defense. That's what I would hold on to. Last night was overall the Vikings playing a terrible game against a Rams team that's just got a lot of momentum right now. I would not hold last night against Brian Flores in terms of coaching
He's
opportunities.
almost like the last guy I would hold last night against
Yeah,
in all reality. Like,
yeah.
but I
There's only so much though, and you give the Rams short field. Like there's only so much you can do as a defense. There's only like so much you can do when the offense is just ineffective. Like Yeah, I think Brian Flores is safe to me.
Don't worry, I'll let you know what I think about the Vikings in a minute when we get to that game.
Yeah, I mean, let's go ahead right now. So the Rams last night beat the Vikings 27-9. Uh, Sam Darnold, well, if you just look at social media after the game, whatever he built up from the regular season all came crashing down last night. And I will say, I still think Sam Darnold had a great year. I do think last night poses an interesting question now. What do you do with Sam Darnold next year? Because your options are you either sign him to an extension, knowing you just drafted JJ McCarthy. You can tag him, but the tag's like 41 million. So what do you do? If you're the Vikings, what are you doing with Sam Darnold as you sit
Well,
here
Sam
today?
Darnold's not a Viking anymore. I think still some team is going to be willing to overpay him. If you were able to bring him back on a short-term deal worth like reasonable money, if I were the Vikings, I would do it
Mm-hmm.
because obviously JJ McCarthy, he has what like a preseason worth of game reps maybe, and then he like tore his I think it was labrum. Either way,
Mm-hmm.
this is a kid who's inexperienced, and I wouldn't mind bringing back Sam Darnold if I were the Vikings to kind of be that guy in the quarterback room that can, give him some pointers because at the end of the day, he did do a lot of things well. He did
Mm-hmm.
do well for them for what, the first 17 games? So I
Yeah.
wouldn't take that away from him. If I were able to bring him back on a reasonable deal to help mentor JJ McCarthy, I think he's got a lot of things he can offer JJ. But as soon as somebody like starts offering him 20, 30, if they offer him that big deal, no, he's gone.
Yeah.
The problem
Yeah. You don't want to overextend yourself
Right.
necessarily.
And the
Yeah.
problem with Sam Darnold is the same problem that's always plagued him, and that's what the Rams and Lions did. You get pressure in his face early, you can rattle him. He starts seeing ghosts in his own words. And we saw that a lot. He was holding on to the ball too long. He got completely rattled. He refused to take chances, and he would just take a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stupid sacks. And that's why I wouldn't blame that this last game too much on Brian Flores because when Sam Darnold's holding on to the ball, gets sacked 10 times. I think he threw an interception or two off the top of my head. I know he threw at least one.
Get the interception and the
Yes,
sack
that was the
fumble.
other one. It's like I knew he had two turnovers. I couldn't remember if it was a pick and a fumble,
Yeah.
but that's almost why I wouldn't hold too much of this against Brian Flores because while Matthew Stafford did do well against his defense, there's also so much you can do when the offense, like the Vikings were last night, is completely anemic and cannot move the football.
Yep.
So credit to the Rams. They did exactly what they needed to do, and they came out with the win. They absolutely dominated Minnesota.
Yep. I mean, yeah, that's kind of everything in a nutshell there. But yeah, I guess we can go ahead and start looking towards the next round. We got the divisional round now, and now it's where it gets interesting because you're down to your final four on the AFC and the NFC side. You probably start thinking about potential Super Bowl matchups and everything like that. But I guess let's go ahead and start. Trying to see the schedule here. Let's just start AFC and work our way around again. Chiefs Texans. I guess give me a reason to think why. Well, actually, since we're doing our picks, the Chiefs are an 8-point favorite right now. Where do you see this one going? Are you just looking at it as the Chiefs? One seed, been there, done that. They'll take care of the Texans. Or do you think the Texans make it interesting, especially with the way that their defense played against the Chargers? Do you think they could replicate that against a Chiefs team? How do you see it going? 8 is a decent sized margin
I
for a
think the
playoff
Chiefs
game.
win this one very handedly. I think the big difference is Justin Herbert gave them a lot of freebies last week. He threw 4 picks, and only
Mhm.
one of them I'd say wasn't his fault, the one that hit Will Disley in the hands. Patrick
Yeah.
Mahomes is not giving him those freebies. They're going to have to make some elite level plays. They're going to have to figure out a way to slow him down because he's not handing them anything. He's not making those same mistakes that Herbert did. He's not
Hmm.
trying to launch balls to like a crosser into double coverage. Like you're not going to get that lucky. So
Mhm.
I think that the Chiefs they'll come out firing, and I think they'll win this one easily because at the end of the day, too, the Texans' offense just isn't right ever since they lost Nico. So, or sorry, since they lost Tank Dell.
Tank Dell.
Mixed
Yeah.
them up, but I think the Chiefs win, and I will say they do cover.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I look, it's one thing to go play the Chargers at home. Now you got to go to Arrowhead. It's not a night game, which maybe they're safe there, but Arrowhead is not an easy place to play, especially when your offense is struggling as it is, and you're going up against was it Spagnolo, who's going to come up with a defensive game plan that's going to attack C.J. Stroud in that offense. I agree with you. I think the Chiefs cover, and I think it's going to be one of those games where the Texans' offense that was so frustrating a lot of the time during the regular season, you'll see a lot of that, and the Chiefs defense is the type that will keep them out of the end zone. So yeah, I think the Chiefs win this one kind of handily as well. Like this is them like on their pursuit for third straight Super Bowl. Yeah, they'll take care of business there. I guess we'll talk about this matchup because this is the one that everybody's got their eye on. The Ravens going up Orchard Park to face the Bills. The Ravens are a 1 point favorite as the road team here. And this one is it's a 6:30 p.m. kick, so it will kind of lead into the night up there in Buffalo. But how do you see this one going? Do the Ravens repeat what they did early in the season, or do the Bills now with more in their arsenal from the first game get their revenge against the Ravens?
I think the Ravens win. I don't think they repeat what they did early in the season, but I think they win a close
Mm-hmm.
one. And I think it'll come
Okay.
back down to them just dominating the game on the ground. I think they'll win that game of clock control, and Lamar Jackson has shown he can make plays with his arms, and I think they do that just enough to sneak out of uh, sneak out of Orchard Park with the win. And I think it's going to be close. I think they probably win on like a Tucker walk off field goal close, like maybe like a 23-20 game. But I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
go Baltimore here.
Okay. I mean, look, I could see that, especially if they get Derrick Henry going like early and often. Then yeah, you figure Baltimore would either just run Henry and kind of win time of possession, limiting Josh Allen's ability to score, or maybe we get some type of shootout. I don't know, but I'll take the Bills in this one. Yeah, I just feel like Josh Allen, the way he's playing right now, if you're going to give me a quarterback that's going to attack that Ravens secondary, which is still a problem. Like, don't get it twisted because Humphrey and Hamilton are Pro Bowlers. Like the secondary is like some great unit. It's not, and it's even before you get to the secondary, you can attack the linebackers in the passing game. So I think for the Bills, that's kind of where like James Cook and it's like Tyler Johnson or somebody that they have coming out of the backfield. I think those two, if they use them in the passing game, they might be able to get some success as well, isolating them like on Roquan and those guys at the second level. So I'll take the Bills. I'll obviously take them +1 because I have the Bills winning this one outright for sure. But yeah, I think this one's going to be a really good game. Obviously, with the MVP talks, even though it's a regular season award, like this game's going to be the one that everybody watches. But I've got the Bills. All right, let's go to NFC. Let's knock these out. Got Rams Eagles. The Eagles are a 6 point favorite at home. And we just talked about they didn't look all that great against the Packers. Some of that's the Packers defense. The Rams defense isn't necessarily on the Packers level, but Rams have some speed on that side of the ball. And the Rams come into this one probably with more momentum than the Eagles do. So I guess who wins this battle? Do you trust Stafford and his offense against the Eagles defense, or you think the Eagles offense against the Rams defense will have a better day?
I like the Eagles. I really do. I think the Eagles are going to end up going to the NFC Championship game. Just once again, this the defense is just so tough to crack, and then the threat of Saquon and Jalen Hurts on the ground. I think this is another situation where you run into a situation where it's clock control. They'll control the clock. They'll control the time of possession, and that's how they'll do it. That's how they'll get the win. I think it'll be close. I think the Rams will battle, but I think the Eagles. I'd give them the edge in this one.
You have them covering the six.
No, I think the Rams keep it within six. Like maybe like a 20, 25-20 game.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Rams cover as well. I think just because of where their offense is, they'll put up some points, and I think the Eagles may have more scoring drives, but I could see the Eagles kicking a few field goals in there. Whereas when the Rams do get their opportunities, maybe they get a couple of touchdowns in this game. I would be surprised if the Eagles won this by more than a touchdown. So, yeah, I'll take the Rams plus the six as well. I think this game could be sneaky, really good because, with that Rams offense, I'm not going to count them out against the Eagles defense that they do have. So we'll see how that one turns out. All right, final game before we get out of here. We have those Commanders coming off of that playoff win against the Bucks, and their reward is they get to go up to Ford Field to face the top-seeded Lions. Lions are a 9.5-point favorite in this one. Look, is Vegas crazy, giving you almost a double-digit line here in the playoffs against a Commanders team that played last week, this past week, so they'll be coming into this game warm while the Lions have been sitting around. How do you see this one going? Can the Commanders keep up with Dan Campbell's aggressive style that they have?
Yeah, I definitely think that I definitely think it's possible. I do not think that we're looking at a situation where the Commanders win, but I do think they keep it within the 9.5.
Okay.
Maybe like a 29-22 game. I think the Commanders will be able to move the ball. The defense for the Lions is still very banged up, so give me the Lions winning, but the Commanders cover.
Okay. I mean, I think out of the four, this is the one that's probably the toughest because of 9.5 is such a large line. I mean, could it be something where, Lions up 10, Commanders kick a field goal, make it a 7-point deficit, try to get the ball back, they don't, and the Lions just sit on it? Or because the Commanders are such a young team, like if they get overwhelmed early, do we kind of see like a Rams Vikings type of thing where the Lions just take on away with it? I hope the Commanders cover because I like what they have going on. I have a feeling the Lions get a double-digit win, but I think it's the type of win where the Commanders don't just get, destroyed or anything. I just think the Lions, as the better team here, more experienced team, I'll take them in the 9.5. I'm not confident in it, but I'm taking my chances here. All right, so there you go. I guess just to repeat it, you've got Chiefs -8, Ravens -1, Rams +6, Commanders +9.5. I have the Chiefs -8, Bills +1, Rams +6, and Lions -9.5. So both of us are taking two favorites and two underdogs. Those of you watching or watching later on, listening, I will put up on the Integrity Sports Network page our picks, so make sure you go look for that either later today or probably tomorrow. But yeah, that's all I got for you. Like that's all we got. So, Brett, anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Yeah. If you like professional wrestling, you can check out the Meaty Boys podcast. We'll be going live in about 10 minutes or so. Me, Mo, talking all the news, all the latest wrestling news.
Yeah, new era in wrestling. Got Netflix involved.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I saw a bit of the first episode. Actually, I think I saw most of it. Like for welcoming to Netflix. I thought it was a great show. So can only feel better about that uh, partnership that they have going on. Didn't they just do like a draft or something? So I'm sure you guys will have that to talk about. So yeah, if you guys love wrestling, make sure you check out Meaty Boys here in a little bit. For me, I mean, I'll be back on Integrity Sports Network sometime later this week, uh, possibly Friday or Saturday with Passion and Precision. I think about Sideline on Thursday. Brett's on there as well, so you'll see us back on the channel for that. And if you want to check out my channel, chomping at the bit for some of my content, feel free to do so as well. But I know you got to run, Brett, to go get ready for Meaty Boys. But appreciate all of you that were in the chat. You had Anthony, you had Jory, you had Damien, you had John, Key, and some others I think that jumped in here. But look, even if you watch this later on, you make it to this point, we'd love for you to leave a comment as well. Let us know who you have facing off in the Super Bowl. That'll be the challenge for you. Leave that in the comments down below. But until next week, for myself and Brett, this has been On the Ball. Enjoy the rest of your night.